Boys, I am back to cover the latest One Piece chapter, chapter 1066, titled The Will of Ohara. And I know I may sound like a broken record, but Oda just does not miss. We're getting bangers after bangers every single week, and it doesn't seem to stop. This pacing is just amazing, because this week we got a face reveal. We got to see a young dragon, we got to see emotion piece, and we got what might be the biggest hint as to who the man marked by flame is. And I'm here to talk about it. But before we get into the video, please consider to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the notification bell for more One Piece content just like this onto your feed every single week. Now let's get back into the breakdown, shall we? So the cover story this week is about the Germa siblings and Caesar getting back to Germa 66, and since they are back there safe and sound, it seems like this is going to be the last cover story we're going to get about the Germas, and I really hope that next week we're going to get a new cover story about Wano. This week's chapter starts off as a continuation from last week, where Shaka reveals to us that the technology that we see on Egghead Island is actually just a product of the past, the product of a certain kingdom. Shaka then tells Robin that the reason why Ohara was destroyed by the Buster Call is because they knew a little bit too much about their kingdom's existence, and that basically this kingdom was so technologically advanced that eventually in history there was a certain conflict between that kingdom and 20 other nations, and after the 20 nations won, they created what we know as today the world government, and that the world government wanted to erase every single trace of that kingdom's history out of the history books and kill every single person who knew about its existence. And this is quite interesting because it seems like Vegapunk is just theorizing about that kingdom's existence. That's why he asked Robin if the reason why Ohara was destroyed was because the world government acknowledges that the theory that they came to was actually the truth. And then Robin kind of tells him that wouldn't someone as high up in the government as you already know everything about that kingdom? But Vegapunk reassures her that he's kept in the dark just as much as anyone, and that even if he is high up, if he ever mentions anything about that kingdom, he will immediately get killed. And this kind of begs the question that the reason why CP0 are coming to Egghead Island is to kill Vegapunk because he knows a bit too much about that kingdom. And then Robin kind of asks him about how does he know about that kingdom, because every single book that the Ohara made about that theory was destroyed, but the will of Ohara still lives on. And I don't know, this is kind of funny to me, but Vegapunk reveals that months after the destruction of Ohara, he actually went there to pay homage or to pay some respect to his old friend, Dr. Clover. And it's kind of funny because he goes on to brag about his friend, about Dr. Clover, that he was so obsessed with the Void Century and that kingdom that he went all around the world as an adventurer to find out every bits of information about it. And that even after he got captured over 10 times by the Marines, he still became the most well-known archaeologist there ever was. But yeah, that information was kind of random, but information is information, right? And then we get a flashback where Vegapunk went to Ohara a couple months after its destruction. He went there and saw the whole place was already burned down, even the Tree of Knowledge. But he stumbled upon the lake in the middle of the island, and he saw all of the books of Ohara laying inside of the lake. And this is because before they got annihilated, oh my god, this word is hard. But before they got all wiped out, the people of Ohara decided to throw all of the books from the library of Ohara into the lake because they preferred to have a wet book than having a book turn into ash. And this is where it gets really interesting. Yeah, boy. Because when Vegapunk got into the lake, he saw giants picking up all of the books. And then we see Vegapunk and Dragon together. And Dragon came for the same reason as Vegapunk, because he used to be old acquaintance with Dr. Clover and came to give him some flowers, right? But let's get back into the character designs. So we see Dr. Vegapunk. Dr. Vegapunk here is super interesting because he has a very elongated head with a Vegeta-ass haircut. And this is actually quite impressive because Oda in chapter 684 has already showed us the silhouette of Vegapunk having the same exact head shape as what we see here in this chapter. And him being an elongated head might tie him directly to the people from the moon, as we see in the NL cover stories. But now let's talk about Dragon. So Dragon right here looks awfully similar to Rocksteady Zebek, but we see that Dragon right here at that time did not have his tattoos and instead had the same kind of design wrapped around his leg. And this is kind of scary because seeing the atrocity of Ohara became the last straw for him to form the Revolutionary Army alongside Ivankov and Bartholomew Kuma. And this is kind of scary because we see Dragon's conviction, the fact that scholars were killed, were wiped out because they questioned a bit about the government is just too crazy and unfair. This is what we see a very, very driven man. And as we know, at that time, Luffy was still not born, meaning that after creating the Revolutionary Army, Dragon met Luffy's mom and had him, which kind of begs the question as to who Luffy's mom actually is, because the fact that a driven man like this will stop in his tracks to have a kid means that Luffy's mom was truly something special. And then it seems like Dragon has some kind of massive prejudice against the Marines and even approaches Vegapunk by telling him that he's a Marine lapdog, a government lapdog, and telling him why didn't he join his freedom fighter gang. And then basically Vegapunk tells him why would he go to a startup company when he can go to a multi-billion-dollar company with massive resources. Vegapunk also proceeds to reassure Dragon that there is good Marines inside of the world government and that he should not lose hope and keep fighting for his purpose. And we all know that there is great Marines inside of the world government, such as Garp himself, Dragon's literal father, unless he is not. And it is after Vegapunk went to Elbaf and read all the books that were inside of it that he was able to advance his research and continue on the will of Ohara. And boys, I said it in my last video, but Jaguar D Saul is alive. And we see Robin just wholesomely trying to hold back her tears, and it's just so, oh my god. It's so great for her character because if Saul is alive, it literally reinforces her importance in the story, because as we know, the further the story goes into the endgame, the more important Robin becomes. And obviously she shouldn't really be someone who only reads the poneglyphs, but also someone who has emotions and has a great character, right? But let's go back a little bit. Like I said, Saul is alive, and him being alive makes perfect sense because he got hit by an attack from Aokiji called Ice Time Capsule. In its literal sense, it's just putting someone in a time capsule to preserve him for the future. And it is the same attack that he used on the Straw Hats during his introduction, where he ended up reassuring them that the Straw Hats that were frozen are still alive. Meaning that Aokiji quite literally put Saul in an ice barrier to protect him from the blast and the fire of the destruction of Ohara. And with time, couple of days, couple of weeks later, the ice around Saul melted down and burned him, creating what might be the man marked by flame. And it will also make perfect sense if Saul was the man marked by flame, because remember when the man marked by flame was firstly mentioned by Kid, who was in the same panel, in the same page? Nico Robin. And Oda will not randomly put Robin in that panel, especially with a reaction like that, for no reason. And that means that Kid wants to find Saul in order to get closer to the One Piece. And boys, I can literally smell the peak of Elbaf, because with how the story is progressing, we might see the Straw Hats, the Kid Pirates, the Red Hair Pirates, and even potentially the Blackbeard Pirates in Elbaf fighting for that final information. And with Elbaf being Usopp's arc, it seems like this is going to be even more hype than we ever could have imagined. But yeah, at the end of the chapter, we switch back to Luffy's group and they're trying to awaken somehow the robot that they saw, trying to call it names like Robonosuke in order to awaken it, but it didn't work. And then suddenly some kind of shockwave just came out of the robot, and then we see Dr. Vegapunk half stuck inside of the robot, and he says something quite interesting. I'm not going to talk about it here because I need to do more research, but he says that perhaps space and time bent mid-warp. What I can kind of assume is that in order to get into the robot and control the robot, you need to somehow bend space and time to fuse with the robot. I'm not quite sure, but this is a very interesting concept. But yeah, Luffy saves him from the robot, and upon seeing Luffy, Vegapunk says, "You're Dragon's boy, right? I knew you'd come. Good job on making it here." And he also says pretty much the same thing to Bonnie and says, "Oh my god, you've grown so big." And we all know what he's talking about, boys. You know? And then we get to see the full face of the present Dr. Vegapunk, and he literally looks exactly like Einstein. But compared to his character design that we've seen in the beginning of the chapter 22 years ago, he does not have the same elongated head. Instead, it seems like he has some kind of apple cap on his head, which I can kind of assume that he separated part of his head and distributed to all of the Vegapunks. And I see quite a lot of people not liking this character design of Vegapunk, saying that it's too goofy, that he should look more badass or something. But I beg to differ, because I think this is actually perfect for his character and what he was meant to be, a literal mad scientist, a genius science. And this is One Piece we're talking about. Everything about One Piece is technically goofy, so why would people even complain about it is out of my understanding. But anyways guys, give me your thoughts. What do you think about this chapter? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Tell me in the comments down below if you like Vegapunk's character design, and whether or not you like the fact that Saul is still alive and potentially is the man marked by flame. But yeah, tell me anything in the comments. Let's have a discussion together. So don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell, all that YouTube goody stuff. And until next time, drink some Coke.